Hey, it's another Human First AI Marketing Podcast. I'm Mike Monague, your host and founder of Avenue 9, avenue9.com. My guest this week is Zeke Camusio, talking about how data is speaking to us. He's with Data Speaks AI, and you can find them at dataspeaks.ai. We both kept it very simple. We're great marketers, and that's what we're going to talk about is how you can use AI-powered marketing analytics to help you make better decisions, create better experiences for your customers, and hopefully, get a better ROI on those dollars, right, Zeke?
Absolutely. Yeah. Happy to be here and excited to be talking about AI, the future of marketing and business in this new age.
So let's talk about the data first, because I love your slogan, helping great marketers make great decisions. And this is the Human First AI Marketing Podcast. So I think, it's always nice to start with the frame of like, we're not trying to replace marketers. We're probably not going to have AI agents, going and doing all of the stuff and making all the creative and making all the decisions. But we can supercharge our own marketing expertise with predictive analytics and more information than we've ever been able to have before. So how do you think about kind of the human in the loop or human first philosophy when it comes to these predictive analytics?
Yeah, so I think it's important to understand what machines do better than humans and what humans do better than machines. We have an ability to connect with clients, to understand their unique businesses, to have so much of the context that is critical. There's no right strategy. So something that is a good recommendation for one client might be a horrible recommendation for somebody else. So it's really important to have that intuition, that business sense as a human, and really look at ways that AI can enhance our ability to be better marketers. So there are a lot of layers to that, but I think that most marketers would probably agree that if you have data in front of you, the data is accurate and relevant, that would help you be a better marketer. And I think the one of the biggest challenges that marketers have is the average brand has access to 12 different marketing platforms. So you have maybe your e-commerce, Amazon, maybe 5 or 6 different ad accounts, Facebook ads, Google ads, TikTok, and so on. You have Google Analytics, you have an email platform, maybe an affiliate platform, an influencer platform, and so on. So if you had unlimited time, you could spend a week going over all that and figuring out what's going on. You wouldn't be able to make decisions in real time because it just takes so long. And also you'd have to be logging into 12 different platforms on a daily basis, and that would take your whole day. So I think it's important to understand that AI can do that in a fraction of that time. So the way I see the future of AI, we have this amazing technology, which is large language models, which is the foundation on which AI applications are being built. And that's great if you have general questions because they've been trained with all the data on the internet. But you want to ask questions about your business and your data, right? So that's where just adding that context is really critical, right? Like you have access to all this data, but also you had to help these agents understand, where to go for what data and so on. So and that's for the most simple use case, which is kind of a chatbot where you're asking questions, getting answers. It needs to know that this table has your Google Ads data, what each column is called, what it means, how to calculate ratios. For example, let's say that you don't have ROAS, return on ad spend, right? Then the model should be smart enough to understand that that's revenue divided by spend. Again, that's the simplest form of AI, and beyond that, it wouldn't require a prompt, right? Like you would be able to analyze millions of data points daily, discard anything that is irrelevant and make a judgment call that if I have, say 100 different insights, knowing that you're not able to act on all of them at the same time, having a little bit of help from a domain knowledge expert to give it that knowledge in terms of how do you prioritize what to bring up, what to leave out, and that all these scenarios. Like one thing that comes to mind is, for example, if there are certain keywords for which you have a really high conversion rate but low impression share, these are really good keywords that we should be going after, but that might or might not be relevant. Maybe you don't have any keywords, so
well, that's where I was gonna go with it. I think you bring up an interesting point of what humans are good at and what AI is good at, because I think any one metric is a dumb metric, right? If you're only optimizing for click-throughs, then you're not worried about conversions. Or if you're only optimizing for conversions, you might be missing a huge brand opportunity to build awareness or top of the funnel stuff. And so I think for far too long, people have been looking at easy metrics that are to explain to your boss or the owner of the company or whoever the client or investor is, right? And be like, oh, look, number goes up, right? So we got more followers on social media than we did last month. That means our numbers are going up. Or we've got more leads. That means numbers are going up. But really, if we're making great decisions, we're looking at a lot of different cases. And I think humans are particularly bad at predictions, probability, or when things are somewhat random, so that maybe something that worked yesterday doesn't work today, or a keyword disappears because the language changed across the United States. And so now where we used to call it predictive analytics, we're calling it AI now, and that keyword disappeared. We're not paying attention to that, or we're coming at it with a lot of bias of what words and languages we're using versus what's actually happening throughout the whole process and all of the data and across the country that really a human can't keep track of anymore. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one way to think about it is that if you were looking at that specifically, you'd probably find it as an analyst, but you have to be checking for 1,000 different things. And there's all this conditional logic that if this happens, then look here, and understanding the causal relationship between things. So there are things that you can impact directly and things that are you can impact indirectly. So for example, if you say I want to increase my revenue, well, that's great, but there's no knob that you can turn up and just turn revenue, right? So okay, we had to break that down. So what does it look like? Well, you need people coming to your website. You need those people to convert. You need the customer lifetime value to be as high as possible. So, for example, are you getting, if revenue is down, is it because you're getting less traffic, lower quality traffic? Is your website not converting as well as it used to? So, like, it's all these different paths in the forest that keep finding forks and more scenarios. So training a system to do that is it's what we do, right? But it's pretty powerful, right? Like to replicate your capacity as an analyst, all this information that you've been putting in your brain over the years, to be able to train a system to systematically go and look for all the things and only present you with the things that actually matter.
Yeah, and I love that conversational part you highlighted too, which is really cool, is that you can think of it like a marketing assistant, where you can go through and you can dive through the 12 different platforms, or you could go to your assistant or your AI assistant and say, hey, Data Speaks, tell me, did conversions go up or down on that landing page last month, and what are we looking at? And you can ask it questions to help you make better decisions, and you can inspect the data a little bit easier than it would have, like you said, taken a ton of time and effort to do. And one of the things I noticed on your website that I really liked was the platform, the process, and the people that you outlined. Is that it's not just about the data. It's not just about the numbers. I mean, you have to have accurate data. You have to understand what the process is. You have to have a platform to collect all these pieces of data and put them together. But you also need people in that loop to put all these pieces together, make sure that they're updated, double check the work, make intelligent decisions based on what they're hearing and seeing from their clients and prospects and target market. Can you tell me how you guys kind of landed on those three: platform, process, and people?
Yeah, of course. So at the core, we're a team of data scientists. So that's the first thing we started doing as a company, doing a lot of mostly attribution projects. So helping businesses understand what drives their conversions of revenue, what campaigns, channels, and also what return on investment they get for every dollar they put into them. The scaling curve for each of them, so as you scale them up, you get a lower return on investment, but you want to be at the top where you're maximizing the profit, and you also want to allocate your budget in the most optimal way possible. How much do you allocate to top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel? What are the best tactics and type of media for top of funnel, and so on. So and we had a fair level of success with that, and what we found is that we were getting approached by a lot of different companies that just couldn't really afford paying 10, 15K a month for a team of data scientists. So we started brainstorming what it would look like to have a self-serve platform where we would do all the work, just make it super intuitive for people to understand it, so they don't have to work directly with the data scientists, minimize our involvement and make it more affordable. So we came up with a solution that cost about a quarter of what it costs to work with a team directly dedicated to you, which is great for companies that are spending, say, less than 50K a month. So it's on advertising, and so that's the platform piece, right? So the self-service. So not only do we with the team, we meet with our clients once a week, but with the solution, you go and you log into your analytics, you see all your data in one place, you can keep track of your business, you get a ton of different recommendations, you just act on them on your own. And the final one, process, is essentially a framework that I've developed with my team over the years. I've been in this space for about 25 years. I had a marketing agency for, I think, like 7 years that got acquired in 2015. And that's when we started doing this. So essentially, the idea is that you look at data, formulate a hypothesis based on that, take action, then measure whether your hypothesis was correct or not, or by how far you were off, and then you repeat. So one example of that is you say, I noticed that people are coming to my product pages, but they're not adding to cart. The data is suggesting that when people read reviews, they're twice as likely to add to cart. So we're gonna put the reviews higher up on the page, and then you essentially go into it as a scientist with the mindset that this is an experiment. Nobody knows the truth. Let's let the data speak for itself. Hence our name, Data Speaks, right? So you let it run its course, collect data, and then you learn from that. So part of that is having a regular cadence that usually it's once a month, but some companies do this once a week, where they look at, these are the 5 experiments we're running right now. This is what we learned from each one. And what it does is it creates a positive culture around data, where we're learning from the data rather than we are we're looking at your performance as a marketer, and either it's going to be great and you're going to get accolades, or it's going to be crappy, you're gonna get fired. Like nobody likes that. I found that when companies don't really adopt a data-driven culture is because there's like, carrots and sticks rather than a culture of learning from your data.
I think that's huge. And it kind of leads me to my next question for you, which is sort of the past, present, and future of data. Because I think, well, I've experienced over my career, you and I have both been doing it about the same amount of time. When we started, it was horrible data. It was all basically kind of anecdotal because you couldn't measure anything. We could measure maybe website hits and stuff when I started, and that was about it. Was page downloads and then actions like direct response that people took or sales numbers, and we're pretty much guessing on all kind of brand and engagements and stuff. And then I think we got into an era where the data was pretty accurate. Right, that we were seeing stuff, but there wasn't a ton of robots or spam or fake, things going on. It was fairly interesting, and we could track some stuff, but there was still a lot we couldn't track. Then I think for the last 5 to 10 years or so, we've been in this era where we thought we were tracking more accurately and more stuff than we actually were, and people were still kind of making what I would just kind of call biased decisions or dumb decisions over things because we were seeing parts of the story, and it felt like because we had more data than we ever had that we were better at it, but it wasn't necessarily accurate data, and it wasn't necessarily better decisions. And now what you're talking about is really cool, helping get better numbers, separate humans from robots, understand the ins and outs like a data scientist, and make better decisions. But I'm also curious about where this is going. So the first question for you is, what's different now than what was different pre-pandemic, 10 years ago in the world of marketing analytics?
Yeah. So one of my favorite quotes is from Mark Twain. He said, "The problem isn't what I don't know, but what I know for sure that just isn't so." And that's so true for tracking, because really what happened is for pre-internet, there was no pixels, no way to track individual customers. Essentially, you had to model, if you wanted to know what's driving people to your store, you had to model, maybe TV, radio, print, things where you just couldn't track who's doing what, right? The internet then allowed us to put pixels in a bunch of different places, so we have our website, our Google Analytics pixel, we have our Google Ads pixel, our Facebook ad pixel, 15 different pixels. And the promise of that is that we're able to see a conversion, like somebody clicked on this ad, purchased something, we know, they drove the sale. And I think that was fairly harmful because it gives us an illusion of knowing something that we just didn't really know. And really, when you think about it, consumers interact with you across a number of different channels, a number of different devices, and we can't say, "Oh, the last click before the purchase was this, therefore that's what drove the sale," and ignore the whole customer journey. And that's how pixels track. And they also have an arbitrary attribution window, which is usually 7-day click, 1-day view. So if somebody found you 8 days ago and they purchased and took a couple of days to do a little research, then that pixel is not going to track that conversion.
Let alone 8 months ago, they saw your first ad or downloaded your first white paper or something else that didn't get attributed, or the social media posts and stuff. I think can be overvalued, certainly, if we're optimizing for views, but there's also some just awareness of somebody found you and that's where they saw you, or a live speaking event or something that just, you never have any idea what the first thing was or what the message was that really changed their mind and caused them to take action, which is the one that we're measuring, is those final actions that they were taking.
Yeah, and you're right. And over the last few years, with the death of third-party cookies, privacy settings, ad blockers, and whatnot, we're seeing now that over 40% of conversions are not being tracked. So something that was already not a good predictor of what's driving conversions, now it's even getting worse and worse and worse, which I think is good, because then it's putting a little bit of doubt on something that we were so certain that was a
Right.
good way to measure. So now at least we're aware that there's an issue. Another issue has to do with what in statistics we say, correlation doesn't imply causation. So a very common scenario is, let's say you have a huge email list, right? And you send a 20% off for Black Friday, and somebody, is uh, clicking there is, before that in the day, they were just like browsing Instagram. They happened to see your ad. They didn't click on it. They just viewed it, right? And then they get an email, they purchase. You're going to have Instagram say, hey, we drove that sale. So yeah, there's a correlation between that person seeing that and the sale, but in reality, it's not measuring incrementality, right? It's looking at, is making the assumption that if somebody saw me, then I drove the sale. That's the equivalent of saying, you hire a promoter to be holding a sign right outside your store. Um, if you usually get 100 customers a day and now you get 120 a day, that's 20 additional customers. It doesn't matter that 120 people saw the guy with the sign, so for all those reasons, and also because you have a lot of different pixels, people can click on a Google ad, Facebook ad, they'll both claim that sale, but neither one of them has access to your source of truth, which would be your Shopify sales, for example, or maybe you also sell on Amazon. Amazon doesn't allow you to have pixels. So it's a big problem, right? Like, we have all these different marketing activities, we have outcomes, and
Yeah.
pixels don't really give you a way to map these activities to the outcomes. And as marketers, we not only do we want to do good work, but we also want to focus on the right things, because you could do something really well, but if it's the wrong thing to do, it's not going to have a lot of impact. So that's what we do. We help marketers understand the impact they'll have per activity, the return on investment they're going to have for every dollar they put into each type of media. And that way, when you're investing your budget, invest your time prioritizing projects, what's actually going to drive your outcome up. So that's a little bit of
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's kind of the
I
question.
love thinking about that and what you said about the attribution, because I think in so many things in life, we think it's a one or a zero binary answer of like Facebook drove the sale or Instagram did. But the fact is, all of it does. And so I think when you're sophisticated with analytics, you can apply percentages to these. And I've worked in enterprise marketing as well. And like in an account based marketing plan, like there may be 100 people involved in this discussion. There isn't an ultimate decision maker. There isn't one piece of content that we made that drove the sale. There's hundreds of influencing factors and websites, and they saw this piece of content and they also did here, and this person did a different search and went to a different blog post, plus we had the salesperson involved, plus we have this great podcast or something. And so it's not one thing. It's how do we kind of increase that aggregate
Absolutely.
score
And I think that's where um, a lot of the attribution tools in the market use multi-touch attribution. So essentially, if somebody that let's think, like Instagram ad, Google ads, email, they say, oh, 3 touch points, let's give a third to each, right? That's as arbitrary as saying we're going to give 100% to the last click or 100% to the first click.
right.
There's no way that that's, well, it's not, there's no science to support that assumption.
Yeah.
And that's the issue with MTA. Like there's solutions like triple whale that everybody loves, but it's based on this pixel that it's not really measuring impact. It's just saying, somebody walked to your store, they saw this guy, therefore the guy deserves, the percentage of the credit depending on how many other guys were, on the.
Well,
I've
I've spent the last 15 years working with salespeople, and if they were involved and they saw, if they were spinning the sign, they want their commission, whether they drove the person to the door or not.
And
It gets really messy. So I guess my next question is, what does the future look like? How do you see this playing out, and what do you think marketing looks like maybe 5 to 10 years from now, and how do we solve all these challenges?
So I think that there are two main aspects of it that are for sure they are our focus, but also I think it's our focus because that's where the world is going. So one of them is accuracy. So you could have the best system in the world, but if it's trained on the wrong data, it's just going to give you the wrong recommendations. And that's the issue with attribution. You can have an amazing AI system built on top of what the platforms are reporting, and it's just gonna be working with the wrong data. So that's I believe that the number one thing, at least in analytics, is gonna be bringing in all these different data sources and starting from your source of truth, which is essentially how many dollars you get in your bank account, right? Like that's that that to be true, and then you have to figure out how much impact each activity has had on that. And then on top of that, so accuracy is number one, accessibility is number two. So what I mean by that is we came across this really interesting research that showed that when teams have easy access to the data they need, they're 3 times more likely to make better decisions. And it's intuitively it makes sense, right? Like if you have to log into 12 different platforms, spend a bunch of time, you're just not going to do it. You might do it once, but you're not going to do it on a regular basis. So I think that's what I'm most excited about AI, right? This series of agents that have access to all your data, they can work among themselves. So maybe one knows where all the data is, the other one is trained in terms of finding SEO problems and recommendations, the other one is trained on analyzing social media data and so on, and all of them provide their insights to this one central agent that then compiles a report and figures out what's relevant to you or not. I think that's going to be absolutely essential because it's just going to save you so much time, and you being able to directly ask a question rather than having to figure out user interfaces. Where was that report? Oh yeah, I had to click here. No, you just ask and go straight there. I'm also very excited about these systems having access to tools, right? So you have access to my email, Slack, Google Sheets, and I could just say, put this in a Google Sheet, or make a PDF and send it to my marketing agency. It already knows who my marketing agency is. I can set alerts, so if my conversion rate drops below this threshold, post it to the Slack message, or let this person know. And I think that essentially most things that you can train a person to do, you'll be able to train an AI system to do for you. And I think that you'll essentially be able to spend a lot more time doing what I think is the fun part, interpreting data, having the judgment in terms of, is recommending 4 different things, but I know that 2 of them are not relevant, so I can train you so you understand now why they're not relevant anymore, and it just makes my life easier, and I can spend my time doing what I really love the most, which is business decisions, talking to clients, and so on.
I think one of the most interesting things you mentioned there is just how often people would compile those reports, right? If you're in a serious marketing agency or working with somebody, maybe there's a weekly stand up where we're talking about the ads and trends. If you're in a high e-commerce or a high value marketing position, but most of the time it's like monthly reporting, and sometimes even quarterly. We're going to go to all these systems, or for an annual marketing report, we're going to go look at, all the data, and we're going to spend the time to actually do that. But now with AI, that can be an instantaneous, real-time solution, that it's always looking at all of the data. And I think the sheer size of data is the other thing you said that it mentioned is, we used to sort of have to keep track of certain numbers because we had to limit it to human capacity or storage sizes. And now with AI and the size of these, learning models and stuff, it's insane. They have access to all of the world's information. And like you said, they can read your email and understand what's in it, or which customers you were talking to if you're in sales, and now add that data to the sentiment analysis and other predictions that are not just, did a salesperson interact with this client, yes or no, but how did they interact? How many times? Is that those interactions going up or going down? Are they increasing the sentiment and speeding up the sales cycle, or are they slowing it down? And we can really look at a whole bunch of causal factors we didn't have access to before. So super cool. Before I let you go, I got to ask you the fun question, which is, I think everybody is worried about the future of AI. So take it out of marketing now. If you just look like 30 years in the future, how do you think artificial intelligence plays out? Do you think they're super intelligence and stuff? Is it like Minority Report with all the data and analytics we're going to get on advertising? If you had to pick a sci-fi movie, which one do you think is closest to where we're going to end up?
It's crazy that I think about 30 years out, and I'm like, I don't even want to go there, because even I don't know what 5 years from now is going to look like. But if I guess if I had to take a guess, we'll have access to any relevant information we need at all times. So for example, if I'm talking to you, like whether it's like an implant they have, or glasses, or I'll be able to know, like for example, if I say, hey, I do a lot of podcasts, I want to know 4 cool things about this the person that I'm going to be talking to, and these are some of the things that I want to know. So you appear on my screen, I didn't even know I was going to talk to you. I just go in, and I'm like I can have a relevant conversation with you, and it's going to be connected to everything, right? So what I'm very, very excited about is being able to think into it, like to be able to say, send this email to this person, right? Or notify this person about this, or if X happens, then do Y, right? So I don't have to check X every day. It will check for me. Or I could say, if X happens, let me know, and then I'll decide how to or ask me for permission to do Y, and then I'll tell you whether or not to do it, right? So I think that's going to be and that's, I think that's more like 10 years from now, like than 30.
Yeah, I put it out there because who knows how long it'll take. But I think you're right. The scary part for me about what you said is being able to think into it like an implant. I still think we should kind of not become human hybrid cyborgs. I got I watched too much Star Trek. I got the Borg in mind there. But I do think what you're talking about, though, is really cool about a personal assistant that's giving you information, or at this podcast, like predicting what's going to happen and say, hey, you're going to be late for this next meeting. Do you want me to tell that person, and you just kind of blinking or doing a nonverbal communication to send the email and stuff and agreeing to it. That is really cool, because there are a lot of times where we want to be present. We want to enjoy this conversation or this podcast. And we know in the back of our head that there's other things that we need to be doing, or decision that needs to be made, or we need to update, save something for later, make a note. I've heard of some AI that already exists for salespeople and stuff that can just note what is happening in the conversation and set the follow-up tasks and reminders for those things. And and next steps, and hold people accountable for those that right now we're just letting drop, right? We're just, throwing a hand up in the air, or whatever we choose to note in the CRM is probably not the best way to go with that information. So I really appreciate your time today. Awesome discussion. Made me think about a ton of stuff. We've been talking to Zeke Camusio at dataspeaks.ai. Dataspeaks.ai is the website. If you're a marketer and you need AI powered analytics and attribution, go check out DataSpeaks for sure. But Zeke, I want to give you one last chance at it. How can you help us, or how can we help you at DataSpeaks?
Well, if you are a marketer, or you work for a brand that is spending $25,000 or more per month on online advertising, we can certainly help you get a much higher return on investment, and make sure that you get the most from every dollar that you put into ads. And if you're not there yet, but have questions, or you just want to talk shop, feel free to reach out to me. I'm sure we can put my LinkedIn, and feel free to reach out and connect if there's anything I can do to help in your journey developing AI applications, or you're interested in the future of AI analytics. I'm happy to connect.
Yeah, that would be awesome. You mean you can actually talk to a human? No, that's great. I love it. Connect with Zeke on LinkedIn. You can connect with me there as well, or go to avenue9.com. Avenue 9, we're doing AI marketing strategy consulting. We're doing high volume content marketing. What that means is, if you want to figure out how to use all these cool new tools in a way that's human first and empowers your marketing team and your creativity, rather than trying to replace them with robots, that's what I want to help people do, from the beginning of their funnel to end of the funnel. And employee or client engagement stuff is my specialty. Love to talk to you. Go to avenue9.com. Until next time, good luck. Keep going, everybody.